Everything from clothing to household items are getting more expensive each day. The world of fast fashion has complicated clothing production by outsourcing around the world to whoever can sew them the cheapest. And now you, the consumer, are paying the price with rising costs. American Giant is about keeping things simple and close to home. They aren't affected by tariffs because their products never leave the U.S. So when you buy from American Giant, you're taking a stand for hardworking people, local communities, and quality clothes. American Giant directly supports American manufacturers and ensures you aren't footing that tariff bill. Support American-made, tariff-free clothing with American Giant with American Giant. Get 20% off your first order when you use promo code STAPLE20 at american-giant.com. That's 20% off when you use code STAPLE20 at american-giant.com.
The Murder Shelf Book Club contains disturbing content related to real-life crimes. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to the Murder Shelf Book Club podcast. I am your host, Jill. Thank you so much for becoming a murder bookie. I really appreciate you. This is another special interview with the author of a book on a lingering unsolved mystery. The book is Things Aren't Right: The Disappearance of the Yuba County Five by Tony Wright. This is a comprehensive, exhaustively researched study on this case, and it is often referred to as the Bible on the Yuba County Five. In addition to his Things Aren't Right book, Tony Wright is the author of 2 comic books and a graphic novel with Source Point Press. Tony is an archivist, father, a husband, and a lover of rock and roll. When he is not writing or spending time with family, he's a Cleveland Browns fan. Tony has been featured as a Yuba County Five case expert on the Mopac audio podcast, Yuba County Five, and on Netflix's Files of the Unexplained Episode 3. I recommend all of them. But I have an announcement, so attention, everyone. I am going to once again be participating in Creators Row at CrimeCon Denver from September 5th to 7th, 2025. Woohoo! You can save 10% on your badge by using my code, all one word and all lowercase letters, Murder Shelf. So you just visit www.crimecon.com/CC25 to purchase your badge. We had an incredible time over the past 2 years at CrimeCon, chatting, hanging out, having a couple drinks, talking cases, and book suggestions. And I think this year's event in Denver is going to be the best yet. So stay tuned for more details as they come out. Make sure you're subscribed, and I cannot wait to see my murder bookies in Denver. So today, a little bit about the Yuba County Five. Ted Weiher is 32 years old and residing in Yuba City. He's involved with the Gateway Project, which provides jobs for individuals with disabilities and mental illnesses. Ted loves mac and cheese. He is known as the goofy uncle in his family, and he works as a janitor at the local high school. Jack Doc Madruga. He is 30 years old, and he is the driver this night we're going to be talking about. He drives his beloved 1969 Mercury Montego. He is quiet and reserved, and a veteran who served in Vietnam. Jack enjoys life, he loves spending time with his friends, and he even attended college. Bill Sterling is 29 years old, religious, and loves to bowl. He's a quiet guy who enjoys supporting the UC Davis basketball team just like the other boys. Jackie Huett is 23 years old and is best friends with Ted Weiher. They share a close bond. Jackie has a passion for motorcycles and basketball. He enjoys watching I Love Lucy, game shows, and listening to Diana Ross and the Supremes. And he has a girlfriend. And then Gary Mathias, a 24-year-old veteran who had been diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. Now, he has been taking medication since 1975, and this story is taking place in 1978. Now, during this time of adjusting to his meds, Gary has initiated some fistfights, which had landed him in trouble. But his family reported that he was turning his life around and had been very stable. Gary loves music, plays the harmonica, and even performs in a band. He's also an athlete, and he enjoys sports, obviously basketball. Known affectionately as the boys by their families, 4 of them have intellectual disabilities that give them some childlike qualities. But make no mistake, these adults are thriving. Some are confidently managing their own finances, and they all hold down jobs. And they had plans. They were eagerly preparing for the Special Olympics championship basketball game, which was to take place on February 25th, 1978, with some even laying out their uniforms on their beds in anticipation. And I can relate to that kind of excitement. They were driven by dreams of participating in UCLA's Special Olympics tournament, complete with a fantastic trip to Disneyland, which was 5 months off in the future. But the night of February 24th, 1978, the boys hopped into Jack Madruga's Montego, excited to attend the UC Davis game in Chico, California, a journey they knew well, usually taking about an hour. After enjoying a thrilling game, which wrapped up around 10 p.m., they made a pit stop at a convenience store, buying candy and snacks. And then they disappeared. They never made it home that night. For unknown reasons, as they were driving home, they would take a detour into the Plumas National Forest, located in the foothills of the Sierra Nevada mountains, traveling 75 miles in the wrong direction. Here, the temperature is significantly colder, below freezing, and none of them are dressed for this weather. They will abandon their car and walk into the snowy forest, where they mysteriously vanished. And with this brief introduction to this devilish mystery, let me welcome Tony Wright to the Murder Shelf Book Club podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me on the show.
Well, thanks for writing such a fabulous book.
Well, thank you. It was an experience, but it was a great experience.
I can't imagine. Your book is big.
It is.
I have to ask you this. This case is 47 years old. What hooked you into this adventure of yours in gathering all of the information that I've ever heard, plus so much more, and being able to put this in a way that is so understandable to the reader?
I found out about the case in 2018. I was watching a YouTube channel called Criminally Listed, and the 100th episode talked about the case. And when you watch one channel on YouTube, like the algorithm suggests other channels, and they were all talking about this Yuba County Five case. And I thought, oh, that's a really interesting story. I'd like to know more about it. So I went to look for a book at the library, and there was nothing available. And then I thought, well, if my library doesn't have something, maybe Amazon will have a book, and nothing was available. So I decided to write the book. And this was the end of 2019. So I thought going into 2020, I had all this time and all of this freedom to sort of like travel about and do what I need to do. And so from about 2020 until about 2023, I worked on the book and traveled to California twice and researched the case, interviews with the families and law enforcement and people who sort of were familiar with the case and had researched it, and just some other people who were sort of tied to the community or tied to the case as well. So it turned out to be like this 3-year journey into creating this book. I don't know how long it would have taken without COVID, but I'm just glad I got to do this book my way and just take the time to do the research the right way and tell the complete story.
I think that's one of the reasons I liked it so much, because you took your time, even in the story itself, to measuredly go through all of the details. I'm a detail person. I love the details.
Thank you.
And thank you for writing it, because there's not a lot of information out there in book form.
No, my book, and then the only other book is by an author, Drew Beeson, who's a friend of mine. He has a book called Out of Bounds, and then there's maybe 1 or 2 other books out there that are floating around that are sort of Yuba County Five-ish. They're sort of these bizarre books. So yeah, I'm happy that the book is out there and people have it as something to get started diving into the case.
Yes. Well, please dive into the case. I've already left them hanging that they go off and make this bizarre detour and disappear.
Right. And yeah, that was the night of late hours of February 24th, 1978. And yeah, they vanished in the Plumas National Forest. And the families are very concerned. They're worried. They're up late. They're calling each other. And by the early morning, they decide to call the sheriff's department, but nothing really comes of it because the sheriff's department hears, 5 men that are missing that are in their early 20s to early 30s. It seems like a long Friday night in their opinion, so there's no need to rush out and find these men. But the families do some of their own groundwork and they do some searching. They get the word out to the media. They go up to Chico where they went to the basketball game. And by 8 o'clock Saturday, or 8 p.m. Saturday, they've got another call into the sheriff's department saying, all right, it's been 24 hours. We don't see these guys. Let's get a report going. And so there was a be on the lookout for these guys, from up to the Oregon state line down to the Sacramento area. And the car isn't found until Tuesday, February 28th. And that's when it was reported in by one of the forestry workers who actually saw the car up in the Plumas for a little while. And so when they went home and watched television, they started putting 2 and 2 together like, oh, it's that car that I saw up in the Plumas. So law enforcement got up there. They checked the car. The keys weren't in it, but they could hotwire it. And there was a quarter of a tank of gasoline left in the car. The wrappers and pop bottles and milk bottles were left in the car from the trip to Bears Market. There was a map out. There was like a kind of like a sports page kind of publication, and like the tickets were in the car along with a program from the actual game. So investigators said, all right, these guys are at the game. We know a little bit more about this, but they're not in the car. And the car had been stuck in some snow. The amount of snow they were stuck in varies from a few inches to 6 inches of snow to maybe a little bit more. But what we do know is the undercarriage of the car wasn't damaged. The tires definitely look like someone was spinning them at one point, trying to get out of the snow. But the men were nowhere to be found. So a massive search and rescue operation gets underway. The car is located in Plumas County, so Plumas County heads the search and rescue operation. Yuba County does work back in Yuba County to handle any sightings or any other leads they need to follow or start talking to people. And unfortunately, as the car is found, people are calling in from all over the state saying, oh, I think I saw these guys, or maybe I saw a couple of these guys. So law enforcement has to follow all those leads. And then they find out there was a guy on the same road as they were that night. He was stuck in his car. He was up ahead. Yeah, I'm not sure how far up in the distance he was located from their car, but he's the last person to see him alive. He starts talking to the press and is interviewed by law enforcement, and his stories are not at all consistent. Mm-hmm. Everything from his heart attack to what he was doing that night, what he heard when the Montego pulled up into the Plumas. He talks about his walk back to Mountain House, but he never tells anyone at Mountain House he saw the car up in the Plumas, and someone needs to call, law enforcement because these guys ran into the woods.
Tony, I am not a medical doctor, but I have to tell you, in reading about his evening trek from having a heart attack, throwing up, defecating, I think he had angina and maybe too much to drink.
That's what other people have said. And I talked to his neighbor, a guy by the name of Tom McGarry, who's mentioned in the book. Tom has said that Shones claimed he had angina and it was a constant problem, but he was always getting stuck up in the Plumas from either having too much to drink or just getting stuck in the snow. And so he did not endear himself to the locals up in that area. He was definitely an interesting character, but he's the last person to see the men alive. They vanish into the Plumas on February 24th. So you have Butte County involved, you have Yuba County involved. Sutter County, where Bill Sterling's from, is involved to a certain point. Neighboring Plumas County to Butte County gets involved as well. The state becomes involved. So you have like February, March, April, May, this investigation's going on. And March is probably their busiest because that's when they're doing an extensive search and of the Plumas. They have a helicopter going. They have cadaver dogs. They have, this and that happening as far as like searching for the men. They bring in psychics. They interview family members. They're getting a lot of letters from people who are some colorful and interesting characters. Some of the searching does continue through April, May, and nothing really happens until June when some bikers find the remains of Ted Weiher up in this Granite Basin area near the Daniels Inc. campground in these trailers that were used by the Forestry Service. And Ted is found in a bunk bed in one of these trailers. He has passed away. He has lost close to 100 pounds. He was clean shaven at the time of his disappearance. His beard shows growth, which really puzzled the coroner's office because they wanted to know exactly how long he was in that trailer. And within the trailer, they found a candle that someone had used. They found sea ration cans that had been opened. There was dried food that had never been touched. There were other supplies like blankets and flashlights. Some of those were scattered about or kind of put out in the area around the trailer. So in hopes if someone would get them, we don't know what happened. But also in the trailer, when they found Ted Weiher, they discovered Gary Mathias' shoes. So Gary's shoes are in the trailer. Ted does not have any shoes on, but he has really bad frostbite. And his pants are sort of rolled up, or he had like either trousers or jeans on, but they were rolled up to his knee. And it showed bad frostbite, blood poisoning. And so once it's discovered that Ted was found in the trailer, like families and the media get up to that area and they start like, okay, what happened? What's next? What are we going to do? So they start like searching from the trailer around the area to see what they can find. And within a few days of finding Ted Weiher in the trailer, they find the remains of Jack Madruga and Bill Sterling. I want to say like 3-4 miles like southwest of the trailer. And so Jack's remains are on like one side of a road. Bill's remains are on the other side of the road. They're not complete sets of remains, unfortunately. There really isn't too much you can do with those remains as compared to Ted's to sort of get a complete autopsy. And then like a day or two after that, the remains of Jackie Huett are found about a mile south of the trailer. And again, you don't have much to work with. But with Ted's autopsy, they said it was pulmonary edema. I guess like fluid had built up in his lungs. You can be in a high altitude. You can have a heart condition that sort of triggers this.
Right.
Ted's family wasn't really aware of a heart condition, so they never could say it was a pre-existing condition with his heart, or it could be from being, they were probably 4,000, 5,000 feet up in the foothills. probably the weather and, rugged conditions of the Plumas were contributing factors. He also had, severe frostbite. The best they could do with the coroner's office is say that the pulmonary edema along with the exposure were definitely the reasons behind his death. And then the same was done for, Jack Madruga, Bill Sterling, and Jackie Huett, because they only had so much to work with. They can only say, we believe their deaths were due to exposure. And, it is a limited amount of, remains to work with. And it was hard for them to actually determine. And they actually had a hard time determining Bill Sterling's remains because he had some dental work that was done.
Right.
And his dentist kind of said, I'm going to make a guess on this. I mean, that's got to be Bill, because the work that he had done on his teeth matched up, and he felt confident that he could identify Bill that way. And the same could go for Jackie. I mean, they just didn't have a lot to work with. So as this is all happening, the funerals are being planned. The community is really reaching out to the families with support. But there's also a lot of questions coming up in the press like, okay, where we found these guys was about 12 miles northeast of the car where it was abandoned.
12 miles. Oh, boy.
Yeah. And the thing is, across the land, if you were to walk across the terrain of the Plumas, it's about 5.6 miles. But the Plumas isn't like walking. It's not like, you're walking into Walden or something like that. You're just, I'm going to be in the woods. This is a rugged terrain, and it's winter, and the conditions just aren't right if you're not sort of what we call a rugged outdoorsman. And so they would have had to follow like these almost like logging roads that would lead to sort of this Granite Basin fire camp area near Daniels Zinc. And the way that the roads are sort of like cut through the area and the way they wind, that ends up being 12 miles. There was reports from the Forestry Service that they had sent a snowcat from like the location near where they abandoned the car to the trailers where they found Ted, because they were new trailers and they didn't want snow accumulating on the roof of the trailers, because if it would get to be too much, that's a lot of extra weight. And if you get like wet snow on a roof and then if it freezes, that's just bad news for the trailer itself. And they didn't want them damaged. And they said that they had sent a snowcat out the day before the men went missing to clear roofs at those trailers. And what happens is it's kind of wild, because a person I talked to I've claimed that they're a very reliable source, and they are, but they asked not to be named, said, yeah, I know that snowcat went from like possibly the Mountain House area and drove up and cleared those roads. So it's super frustrating, because that could have been a path that someone could have said, well, the trailers are up there, because there's talk in my book about, they start looking in other cabins, but there's never been a map made available to show where they looked in the Plumas. So how far north, south, east, west were they going to search cabins or maybe some other areas, because they find like someone had marked a trail with like gold cloth. And so all these things are sort of like adding up like, hey, how come no one went that way?
That seems very inexplicable to me. If they had taken that pathway, literally almost plowed a pathway there. Was it snowing on the 24th and 25th that, people really aren't? So it would have remained clear, and you would have been able to see this has kind of been plowed. Well, I'm not some kind of forestry wizard, but hey, we can walk up there. Maybe this is where they went. Listen, no one thought that. My outrage, and it's all wonderful, but nobody thought that. And it's just absolutely mind numbing.
Yeah. And the Forestry Service said, we told you about the trailers, and some law enforcement members said, no, you never said anything about that to us. There was one family member who said that they had talked to someone in law enforcement, and They asked why they never went up that way, and they said, they wouldn't have made it up there. We never thought that they'd make it 12 miles up that way, which is interesting. And, some people have theorized that they could have been driven up that way or, however, sent up, transported, which you kind of have to know, like, who would have had access to that kind of equipment. Did they walk that way? So it's just interesting that no one checked the trailers. I think that's the bigger issue, is if people knew about the locations of the trailers, they never went up that way, because some of the reporting had them going up towards that area. And there's an area up there called Bucks Lake, and they had talked about searching that area. And if they had a helicopter, how well could the helicopter see? Because the snow did pick up after they found the car on the 28th. And it's kind of sad because, like you were saying, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, probably into Tuesday, they had pretty good weather, and that would have been a perfect time to search. But once the car is found, then the weather starts to get bad again. And it really delayed the search and really hampered the efforts of law enforcement.
Do you think that having the 4 different or 5 different law enforcement agencies, that someone might have gotten that information and didn't relay it, and it, having all of this help actually hindered?
I think so, because from what I've heard and read, it sounds like there could have been some bad blood between Yuba and Butte. There's a tape of a meeting with Jim Grant, who was the sheriff of Yuba County. And I think the families were interested in hiring a private investigator, and Jim Grant was trying to, talk him out of it. But he kind of made a comment along the lines, well, maybe a private investigator would do more work than Butte County or something like that, or be more honorable than them. So he kind of took a jab at him in this meeting, which I found to be really interesting. But in talking to the few people that I could talk to in law enforcement who are still around, it did seem that communication between the two agencies really wasn't great, and things didn't really improve until the state of California showed up in, May of 1978, which would have been, it's a couple months. Well, you're, March, April, May, you're like 3 months in. And the guy from the state said, you guys got to talk and let's get on the same page. Let's discuss the places you've searched. Because it seems to me that some of the things the state asked the counties to do, as far as like research and pull files, it didn't seem like they did that initially, like checking like radio logs the night they went missing, or arrest records the night they went missing. And I kind of sat back and thought, oh, did they do that? Did they not do that? Or there's just so much to this case, it's not even funny. But, as the state comes in towards the end of May, it's like not long after that, they start to find the remains of 4 of the men. And I talked to Avery Blankenship, who was a detective at the time with Yuba County. And he said that by that point, he thought that hunters would find any remains around maybe October, November, and that would give them some answers. But it was kind of surprising they got the information in June. Fortunately, they did, but still, it's just puzzling how they got to that point in the Plumas National Forest, going off the highway, because it's not an easy drive. It's a real tedious trip up into the foothills. I mean, it's a nice drive. I mean, if you're going up there, for me, it was always sort of an ominous drive going up there twice, because you kind of know why you're going up that way, and you know everything you know. But the times I've been up there, it's beautiful land. It's a beautiful area, but there's plenty of opportunities to turn around. It's nothing like taking 70 or 99 home to get to, Marysville or Yuba City. So it's not the same as that area. So you're kind of looking around, and the snow's also going to be a dead giveaway of like, nah, it doesn't snow around here, so we should turn around. There's like so many of these like question marks we've got with the case, like from going from Chico to Oroville up into the Plumas and not turning around, not asking for help. and then leaving a car and going into the woods, it just seems, as the title of the book says, things aren't right. So we've got all of these missing pieces to the case. And unfortunately, I think there's way too much lost to time with the case. I mean, the car is not around anymore. I don't know if any of the evidence was saved as far as like the cans they saved. I do believe some of the maps may still be in existence that were kept in Jack Madruga's 1969 Mercury Montego.
Yeah.
But other than that, I mean, I don't know what else there is other than the case files. And
right.
So, and I have to see the case files, but not much in the way of pictures, just pictures of the car the night they found it. And it was just like a strip, like of all the negatives that they had developed. So that they weren't like individual photos all blown up, which would have been a huge help.
Yeah. It's so frustrating.
Yeah.
I have to ask you if this is true. I'm not sure if I read it in the book or elsewhere because I like seized on everything Yuba that I could find. When they found Ted, they thought he had been alive up till 2 weeks or so prior.
They were concerned about the amount of time that he had lived in the trailer because it's the full beard that really kind of raised an eyebrow for law enforcement because they said, well, if this guy was clean shaven, how long would it take him to grow the beard? Is he going to grow anything post mortem? Like, is that possible? And someone said he could have lived anywhere from 4 weeks, and some more bolder statements were like 10 to 12 weeks. But we don't know the exact amount of time because they said, they wanted to get like a sample of some tissue and do further tests on that. And that was never made available with any of the records. So we don't really know how long he could have been up there, but it's definitely, he wasn't like up there for like a few days then died. He had been up there for some time.
So I wondered about what Tony said about beards growing after death. You hear about nails growing and things like that. So I reached out to Joseph Scott Morgan. He's a former death investigator. He worked at the coroner's office in New Orleans. He worked at the Fulton County Medical Examiner's office in Atlanta. And now he is the host of Body Bags. If you don't know Body Bags, you need to know Body Bags. But anyway, I asked if beards grow after death. And Joseph said no. And if they do, negligibly. So the growth on Ted's beard only happened while he was alive, which means that he lived for some time.
Someone had tucked him into the bed because the way that he was found, someone had tucked him a certain way and his arms are crossed, and there's cans of food opened in the trailer. Someone had been up in that trailer. And with Gary Mathias' shoes in the trailer, we can only speculate that, Gary's in the trailer. Jackie Huett's dad claimed to have found handwriting on like a chalkboard or a whiteboard or something that he claims is the handwriting of his son. And family members for Gary's side of the family say that they saw handwriting that showed Gary was writing something. So that at least has those three in the trailer. Could Jack Madruga and Bill Sterling have been in the trailer? Maybe, possibly. But we don't know much about any clues that link those two to the trailer. Like the reported clues that were found inside the trailer. The trailers are long gone. And I don't even know if any of the evidence, like I said, from that trailer ever existed. And if they did a thorough inventory, if they took any photographs. I mean, we know that some photographs do exist. There was one a couple I just saw. ABC News out of Sacramento did a report on the Yuba County Five, I want to say last year. And there were some photographs that showed up, and I thought, ooh, I've never seen these before. And one of them was inside the trailer showing Gary's shoes. And I thought, oh, well, this is a first, seeing these photos. So they exist. But that definitely caught my attention. So some photographs exist, but did they do a detailed inventory of that trailer? Because there's film footage of the trailer being investigated by law enforcement, and there's some things being burned. And you're like, okay, what are you burning? What's going on here? Is that something possible with evidence? You know, something you may want to keep? Yeah. I don't know if it was like the mattress or sheets or anything like that, but I remember seeing something being burned.
That is very, very odd.
Yeah. And
do we know if Gary and Ted wore the same shoe size?
Good question. I don't know if they did, because Ted and Gary were roughly same height. It's possible. And maybe Gary liked Ted's shoes better, because I don't see anyone going out back into the wilderness without shoes. But
right.
If Gary preferred Ted's shoes and they fit just fine, he could have taken those. But I'm sure I've heard that question before, but I don't know if they had the same shoe size. They were roughly same height, but that doesn't always mean anything.
Right. I just wondered, because you're saying that Ted did not have shoes and socks on, and his pants were kind of up to the knee. So I understand if you're suffering from sepsis, blood poisoning, lost toes.
Yeah.
Sure, you don't want any, I don't even think you want a blanket resting. I think it can be that painful, a blanket touching on that. But if his shoes were thicker, in better shape, I would swap them out.
Yeah, definitely.
If I was I'm going to try and see what happens, I would swap them out. That makes sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to tell how long Gary was in the trailer, but I personally would be of the opinion that it wasn't long, because if Gary was aware that he didn't have medication available, things were going to go south really quickly. And so I think Gary's time in the trailer was probably brief. And that's why I see Jackie in the trailer, because someone would have to watch over Ted. So, I mean, that's definitely a possibility. I just don't see people like Ted and Jackie separating in the Plumas and not hanging out together. It makes sense that Bill Sterling and Jack Madruga were found near each other, because those two were close friends. But but for Jackie Huett and Ted to be apart like that, I just don't buy it.
Yeah, no, you'd be pulling together as best you could.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So do you have your pet theory on what drove them up into the mountains inexplicably, when they know that they have this huge thing going on the next day they've been excited and can't wait to get home for?
Yeah, one theory I have is that to get from point A to point B, they have to travel through the town Oroville. So maybe to get to Oroville, you have to exit the highway. So maybe there was a reason where they exited the highway, restroom stop. Somebody wanted to use the payphone, or somebody had to do something. And once they stopped, and wherever it is they stopped, something happened at that location. Either they ran into someone they didn't want to run into. That was probably like someone with some beef with them who just didn't care about them. Or they could have run into some drunk locals who may have been under the impression that these were stupid guys and they could pick a fight with them and, do something like that. And then from there, it was bad. So they had to get away, and it just kept getting worse for whatever reason. Others were following them, or they were threatened, or something like started in Oroville, in my opinion, and then just went berserk from there and just led them up into the Plumas. And, it was so bad, whatever it was, that they were either forced out of the car or scared out of the car, and they went into the Plumas. And
yes, I agree with you. Listen, they had gone here before. They had driven to Chico before.
Mm-hmm.
Something had to enter into this scenario that caused a change of behavior.
Right.
As a teacher, And if you're dealing with special needs population, not 100% of the time, but much of the time, there's a routine that you follow. You have a daily routine. You get up, you brush your teeth, you have this pattern of behavior. So to deviate that much, a serious deviation,
Yep.
something outside entered their situation.
That's right.
What that is, I don't know.
Yeah. And something happened. I think people know something about this case, and they still remain silent. Because when I started doing research, someone told me, oh, I know someone, and, they know a lot about the case, and they'll tell you about it. And then all of a sudden that person decided not to say anything. And, you hear things from other people about things that were going down in Oroville at the time, or issues that some of the guys had with other people. And I kind of feel like, were those really investigated? Did they really look into them? Did the families bring them up at the time? What was being talked about in regards to the troubles that they could have faced in Oroville, and maybe with people they knew, and some other things that were going on at the time, like what was happening at Gateway, the special needs place where they could get jobs, and they did their basketball, and that place was under attack by an arsonist who was also a murderer. What dots can we connect here to solve this case? So much was just going on at the time up in the Plumas and back home for him that there are so many theories that it's quite I'm just getting flustered talking about it.
It's a conundrum.
Yeah, it's a conundrum, and it's this journey into madness, as I always say, because it's a tough case to figure out, because you're trying to develop a theory and get it from point A to point B to make it make sense. Sometimes you're going, yeah, but, or, this could work, but you kind of always run into those issues with the Yuba County Five case. I definitely don't buy the theory they got lost or wanted to go to another town called Forbes-town.
No,
that doesn't work for me. I'm also not buying problems with Gary, because nobody remembered Gary from the basketball game or the convenience store. So if he was having some kind of psychotic episode or whatever, no, nothing.
Yeah, that doesn't fly under the radar. If you're having some kind of psychotic moment,
he could be fine at the basketball game.
Yeah, you notice. You don't have self-control here, and then 25 minutes later, you're out of your mind. That's just not the way that works.
Yeah, and that's something that, I looked at, thought, no, these are not the things that are happening. Something else is happening. It's way too big, whatever's happening that night, where they just can't seem to get away from whatever it is, because they're going further up into the Plumas, and they're either being followed or told at gunpoint, you got to drive this way and do this and do that, or they're tricked or coerced or whatever.
Are you aware of any bullying incidents?
Yeah. I know there's one person who's talked about, who they call the town bully, interestingly enough, who definitely had a problem with one of them. But some of the others had talked about this same person, kind of having issues with them. So we've got the one person, but did anyone bring that individual up at the time? And did they say anything? Because their name comes up after the fact, many years later. So I don't know what to say about that, other than I know there was a person they had a problem with. I don't know all of them, but I do know probably 3 of them had an issue with this person, and, one more than the others. So that's the missing one, Gary.
Yeah. You only need the one scary bully.
Yeah.
We always talk about Occam's razor.
Yes.
And former teacher. So I know how kids can bully. And I know the boys are older, but there's still some age behavioral variations in there. And I'm saying, why would you deviate so much? Well, if you were frightened of someone, whether they picked up somebody's attention at the game, or if they did stop some point for a bathroom break and caught the attention of somebody who just scared the bejesus out of them. And they said, well, we can't go that way. He's gone that way. We can't go that. Let's go this way. Mm-hmm. And then this happens to people all the time. You hear about these stories that you're riding along, and you think wherever you're going is right around the next bend. It'll be right here. We don't have roads in the middle of nowhere. It's got to be. And they never turn around. And they do wind up getting stuck somewhere. And that happens. I mean, that's human behavior. It absolutely happens. So I just wondered if it was something like that. I mean, I have no idea. I'm speculating, but I'm just trying to think of basic human behavior. Could it be something that simple? And somebody who thinks they're pulling a prank and it's funny until it wasn't funny. And then let's face it, if you were the one who was the catalyst for this whole thing, and now you've got all these police agencies, this massive search going on, I'd be like reading a comic book somewhere. The last thing I'd be doing is saying, hey, it was me.
Exactly.
Self-preservation kicks in for them, and they're going to keep their mouth shut. And I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah. It's unfortunate. I think more true crime than you do. So I know people can be terrible. They really can be terribly cruel. Yeah. And if you're dealing with handicapped people, they have been targets. Mm-hmm. It's just, unfortunately, it's there, and it's a factor, and it's terrible. But I wonder if it was just somebody who got them on their radar and said they're vulnerable. Mm-hmm. I'm going to have some fun. Didn't turn out to be fun.
Yeah, I've tried to figure out like the wrong place, wrong time kind of scenario, like you've been saying. Running into the wrong person, even running into someone they didn't want to see. Like, oh, it's them. Like, great, and it feels more like it's something like that, where there's a problem, we got to get away from the problem, and it's not going away. And now it's sort of more of it's a moment of fight or flight. And because to abandon that car in the cold, in the snow, and you're not ready for it, that's serious. So that also has me thinking that the situation was more dire than people think. And you also hear stuff like people will say, well, who let these guys go out by themselves, and who let them drive, and how'd they get a license and things like this. And it's
get a license the same way everybody gets a license.
Yeah.
You go out, you learn to drive, and you pass the test.
Exactly.
Shall we test these people and see how well they're doing these days?
Exactly. We still hear that today. And, you're hearing it back in the 70s as well. For me, it's a case that's, I'd like to see it solved. I'd like to see them at least find the remains of Gary Mathias in the Plumas National Forest. It's been hit hard by, the forest fires that have been going on out in California. And if anything could come of that, find the remains, that would be great. And I also still believe that there are people in the communities of like Yuba City, Marysville, Olivehurst, even up in Oroville, or possibly Chico, who knows something about the case. And it's time to come forward, because we're getting close to 50 years. You said it was 47, which is right. So we're heading 3 years from the 50th anniversary. So I think whatever you're afraid of, or you don't want to be viewed as a snitch or, an informant or something. I don't know. I mean, that time has passed.
Well, in my book, anybody who at this point comes and possibly shares information, you're a hero.
Yeah.
You are the hero in this story.
Yeah. And you're helping, and you're getting this case solved. And it's like we keep saying, it's been a long time. And what's really good about the case, and I know that there's not always good, but this case was pretty much silent for almost 40 years. Nobody was really talking about it until true crime podcasters needed new material to research. And when someone found the case, they went, oh, well, this is really a fascinating story. And then when one person gets the story and it seems to pick up speed, other people can say, oh, is there more to this? And I think as the more people were digging, I think they got to a certain point. They said, okay, this is where we want the story to be. and it got a lot of people's attention. And I was one of those people. And I said, there's more to the story. So let's dig further and get the truth out there and let people know who these guys were, know more about their community and things that were going on in their lives, and talk about the investigation, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and get into the legacy of the case. And I think that's important to go over. People that I talk to about the case, they're very interested. It's something they can't stop thinking about. I understand them completely. I mean, it's one of those cases that will literally keep you up at night because you just think
Yes.
about it like, what happened? Why did this happen? Why didn't they do this? And it's a fascinating but heartbreaking case. And I think it's definitely time for us to get somewhere with this case and get somebody to talk and say, yeah, well, this happened and then this happened. And that could get the ball rolling with an investigation or getting something as far as closure. I still remain hopeful, even though the case is overwhelming.
It is, which is why I'm really thrilled that you came on my podcast to talk about this.
Well, thank you.
Weather's getting nice and, people be sitting around pools, and I'm hoping they're going to have your book in their hands while they're doing this, and that they get thinking, and especially people in California who may have grandparents who were around at the time and start asking questions around the dining room table and, pass the potatoes. And by the way, Grandma, what do you remember from that? Oh, well, you never know. I remain hopeful.
Yeah. Anything you can do to help. Anybody that knows anything can definitely contact the Yuba County Sheriff's Department. I mean, that's the first place to start.
Oh, heck. Crime Stoppers. You can do that anonymously. You don't have to worry about anyone judging you or thinking anything poorly of you. Just call Crime Stoppers. There's got to be a Crime Stoppers number there.
Yeah, and there's ways to share anonymously and share tips and let them know what you know. And like I said, 47 years, you need to stop thinking about any big bad wolf coming after you because they've gone through 47 years as well.
Right.
These are things to bring up. But yeah, I'm hoping for the best and let this book jumpstart someone's memory or make them actually come forward and say, all right, I know what happened, because I know those people are out there.
I believe they are too.
Yeah. Too much time has passed. All the parents have passed away. Some of the siblings have passed away. I think there's still some family members left, and I think that would be huge for them.
I think it was bad enough not knowing where they vanished to.
Yeah.
People have said to me, the not knowing where my loved one is horrendous.
Yeah.
4 of them at least got the answer to that. But then you go, why? Why? And that question is still hanging.
Yeah, and we still don't know where Gary Mathias is located. Talking to his family, they believe he's in the Plumas somewhere. National Forest, no one's going to cover all 1.1 million acres, or I don't know if it's acres or whatever, square miles or whatever,
and unfortunately there are animals.
Yes.
I mean, that was tough when they found the bodies 4 months later.
Yeah.
That factor.
Mm-hmm. It's going to be hard finding the remains of Gary Mathias, but I think something could come of it. I've been keeping eyes on some stories that people have been finding. There was a story, this year, someone had found remains in the national forest around that area. I mean, it wasn't Gary, but it was still the remains of someone.
Right.
And, that does give you hope that, hikers do stumble across things from time to time and do report it. Mm-hmm. Hope can be out there for these people.
Yeah. Tony, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, telling the story, keeping it alive, taking all the information together and putting it into one place where we can read it.
Yeah.
And I appreciate your optimism too.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on your podcast, Jill. It was great having a chance to talk to you and your listeners, and very happy that people are getting the book and learning more about the 5 and learning more about who they were as people and getting involved in the case and just trying to figure out what happened.
Well, they were here. Yeah. The truth about who they were is important. That the story is out there. Their names are out there and preserved.
Exactly. That's the way it should be. And they're just remembered not as like statistics or victims, but asked people who had a lot of dreams and had family who loved them and friends and girlfriends and things like that. So the more we know about them as people, the better we understand the story.
Yes. All right. Thank you then. I really appreciate you. And I'll be in touch, especially if there's any break in the case.
Sounds good. Well, thank you, Jill. You have a great day.
You too now. Well, what a mystery. I am so appreciative of Tony coming on the show, giving us all of these details. Now, this case remains unsolved. If after listening to this or reading Tony's book, you have a memory surface, a vague recollection, maybe of an overheard conversation, or any clue that might help figure out what happened to the Yuba County Five, please call the Yuba County Sheriff's Department at 530-749-7777. That's 530-749-7777. It's time. It's been 47 years. It's time. Thank you for listening, Murder Bookies. I see you as you hear me. I hope you will add Tony's book to your summer reading list. You can buy Tony Wright's book, Things Aren't Right, The Disappearance of the Yuba County Five, on Amazon, at thriftbooks.com, and through Genius Book Publishing, among many other places. I have links on my blog at www.murdershelfbookclub.com, July 2025, with my sources, show notes, photos, and maps. Don't forget to use my code, MurderShelf, one word, lowercase letters, when you buy your CrimeCon Denver badge, and save yourself 10%. And a little shout out to Amber M. Powell, who subscribed to me on YouTube. Now, some of you have asked how you can help me grow the podcast. Well, have a new episode party, listening and discussing at home. You can contact me at jill@murdershelfbookclub.com, or you can find me on X, Facebook, Instagram, and I'm on YouTube too. You can also join my Patreon for $4 a month to help me choose the next book coming off the murder shelf. So I'll see you in a couple weeks, Murder Bookies. Written and produced by Jill, all rights reserved. Music, The Pewter Elephant by Blue Dot Sessions.